If there was ever a chance the Democrats could win 2 seats in the once Republican stronghold of Georgia, it's perhaps tonight. While Democrats are seeing huge turnout, look at the results on your screen right now. 88% of the vote in, too close to call. David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, Republicans, have very narrow leads over Democrats Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. As I say, 88% of the vote in, a difference there between Loeffler and Warnock of 78,000. But we got time. We have a big surge of votes expected to come in from DeKalb County, according to GOP election official Gabe Sterling out of Georgia. And look, we're seeing huge turnouts in urban centers, in the cities, in the Atlanta metro area, and yet Republican candidates Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue are seeing votes in rural counties, in some locations even more support than Trump received back in November. But if November's election taught us anything, it's that it isn't over until all the ballots are counted. 88% of the vote in, a crucial 12% still to go. Joining me to discuss what the mood is like on the ground in Georgia tonight are Dr. Joseph Watson, Professor of Public Affairs at the University of Georgia, and Latosha Brown, co-founder of Black Votes Matter and fellow at Harvard University's Institute of Politics. Latosha, do you get the sense, let me start with you, good evening to you both. Latosha, do you get the sense that Georgians feel the weight of this election, that the fate of the nation, maybe the world, when you talk about issues like climate change in the Senate, is in their hands?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it is nothing that gives me more joy than this map that is up there right now. DeKalb County is, in fact, the blackest county in the state of Georgia. You know, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see thousands of voters in a county that is going to be instrumental in the outcome of this election. And so it makes me very hopeful to see that the numbers are still out in DeKalb County. We were there today. We've been campaigning there. What I heard from the ground, I've been doing elections my entire adult life. I have worked on, I can't even keep up with them, how many elections I've done from presidential all the way down to constable. This is the first election that I have ever been involved in that I did not meet a single person that did not know that an election was happening. That in itself is profound. And so what I believe is so that we're going to see in this election.
Very, very true observation there in terms of the knowledge and awareness about this race, not just in Georgia, but everywhere, to be honest. Joe, what do you see right now as you look at these returns coming in at pretty lightning speed tonight?
Yeah, they're coming in very fast. There were very short lines today for people that were voting, contrasted with 2 years ago in the election. What we're seeing is in counties that Joe Biden won, in Democratic counties, we are seeing that the Democratic candidates are performing very well, and they're performing ahead of where Biden was in many cases. But we're seeing conversely in a lot of those rural or more conservative Republican counties, the votes for Perdue and Loeffler are coming in a little bit softer than where Perdue finished in November.
Yeah, the softness is going to be the talk of the night if the election doesn't go the GOP's way. And Joe, there was a lot of talk about this division among Republicans. This idea that, the reasonable Republicans don't perpetuate misinformation and conspiracy theories about election fraud, but those who do are undermining the race for everyone else. We saw Gabe Sterling, a top election official in Georgia, one who's been very critical of Donald Trump, denounced his claims of fraud. And yet, interestingly, he still said today he voted for Loeffler Perdue. He told other Republicans to vote for Loeffler and Perdue. I wonder whether maybe we in the media, have we exaggerated the split on the ground among Republicans in Georgia?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that what we're seeing in Georgia is the party is in the midst of a civil war. No one wants to openly say that because it's politically detrimental for you to say that, especially if you're going to be up for re-election. But what we're seeing in Georgia is what we're seeing nationally, which is there is a civil war that's brewing within the Republican Party today. And there's just no way to get around that fact. It's a fact.
It's interesting you use the phrase civil war. Latosha, after the November election, especially after the House races where the Democrats lost seats, there was a lot of talk about a civil war in the Democratic Party between progressives and moderates over defund the police. And yet, correct me if I'm wrong, in this Senate race, been a pretty unified platform from the party, from the two candidates, Ossoff and Warnock, and in terms of people getting behind them. I haven't heard much talk of splits on the ground in Georgia among Democrats.
Absolutely. You know, I think that part of what the Republicans and Trump in particular overplayed his hand is that how there was a new coalition that was rising in the state. I think that, there are Black voters when we're looking at the turnout of Asian American and Pacific Islanders, when we're looking at young voters, when we're looking at Latino voters, when we're looking at this coalition, I think, that's formed itself, that are working together, this is a new South that is rising, of white voters. I think that there are people that are frustrated, that actually, there are some of us that actually believe in democracy, that are literally working together to really be able to have a more representative and inclusive government in office. And what he has done is he's underestimated that our power, and when we work together, we will win.
Latosha, let me ask you this. After Joe Biden won Georgia, the first Democrat to win Georgia in a presidential race since 1992, after he won that race, there was a lot of talk of it was Black voters that helped him win. If Ossoff and Warnock win tonight, that's going to be even more to do with Black voters turning out today, especially in early voting. You are the co-founder of Black Votes Matter. You have been credited with organizing and getting people registering to vote. What has been your main message to Black voters in Georgia to get them to turn out, to register, to vote?
I like the number 3. So there's kind of 2 phrases with 3 words. The first one is we have power. And the second one is Black voters matter. That what we've done is the focal point for us. Oftentimes what we see in these elections, that the focal point is just on the candidates. It's on the candidates or the political parties, but not necessarily letting people know that they have power and that we can really exert our power and operate in our agency and that we matter. And so in that message, I think that has resonated, that we've centered that Black voters in fact matter, that in this state of Georgia, when we see 4 million people who have filed for unemployment, when we've seen from the president's office all the way to the governor's office, a lack of leadership around COVID-19 that has been devastating to our community, that when we're seeing police reform, when we're seeing and witnessing a man that is out for a jog and he's hunted down by vigilantes and shot in the back, when we're literally on the eve where there's a man that was shot in his back 7 times and there's no one being held accountable, we know that there is time for something different and we need to hold people accountable. And as we've been talking about those issues and really being able to really center Black people in these issues and their power in those issues, that in fact, that resonates with people.
Joe, here's a question for you. Where is the equivalent of Black Voters Matter in the Republican Party? I mean, this is a party which basically seems to have thrown its hands up in the air when it comes to demographic change. Back after Mitt Romney lost, there was a massive autopsy done. Why did we lose? We need to try and win Latino voters. We need to see the country changing. And yet after Trump loses, he doesn't even accept the loss, but after Trump loses, there's no sense of what do we do differently? What do we do differently in this runoff? What do we do differently going forward? It seems to be the case that whenever we talk about demographic change, it's just assumed, well, that should be, that's going to be a Democratic state or a Democratic county. Why are the Republicans putting up a fight for minority voters, aside from the obvious answer, which is they're okay with racism?
Well, I think that one of the things that you've seen Republicans try to do is to try to focus on criminal justice reforms and things like that they think play well with Black voters. But I think they don't really make an effort to communicate directly to Black voters about the things that Black voters care about the most. When candidates do that, they can be very effective and do well within the Black community. I'm from Illinois, and I've seen candidates do very well with Republicans within Black constituencies, but it requires an actual concerted effort. And I think that part of the challenge that the Republican Party has right now is if you don't really accept what's happened, in the case of Trump accepting that you've lost and Republicans writ large accepting where you've lost and the fact that you've lost, you really can't do anything to say we've got to refresh our messaging. I have had a full conversation with folks about in Georgia, this is the last vestige of the Southern strategy being played out in Georgia. If you look at the ads that have gone out, against, in particular, Raphael Warnock, they're textbook,
yes,
Southern strategy ads. And the challenge is that not only alienates Black voters, that also alienates suburban white voters as well, college-educated white voters as well. And it's not good for the Republican Party to focus on message themes and approaches like that. And I think it's costing them, but they're in such, certainly the Trump segment of the party is in such a state of denial, you can't even begin to grapple with that and recognize the fact that the Republican Party has to make serious changes to how it communicates to constituencies, whether it's Asian Americans or Black Americans or college-educated Americans, if they want to succeed going forward. They've just got to get to that point and realize that. And I would say this, win or lose for these runoff races, the fact that these runoffs are so close that Republicans aren't walking away with this in a system that's really designed to protect incumbents. If you think about it, the fact that this is such a tight race, win or lose, there's going to be enormous pressure on Republicans going forward to change if they want to remain viable in states.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point. Joe, Latosha, we'll have to leave it there. Latosha, go on briefly. Last word to you, Latosha, briefly.
I agree with him. I actually think some of their ads actually did the opposite. I think they motivated Black voters to, in fact, vote.
Yeah, indeed. And that would be a great irony there. Thank you both for your time. We were just looking at